Old times here, Brad.
No kidding, boy.
Feels like old times. 13 years ago, we were doing this in a dank little musty room with cords attached to our phones and
Live, no less.
live every Wednesday.
Yep, there you go.
Welcome to Deer Talk Now. Thanks for joining us. I am Dan Schmidt. He is Brad Rucks. It is late July. It's hot outside. It's like 85 today.
Yeah, but it's a strange year.
Isn't it?
Oh, my God. The amount of rain we got, I was just telling Dan, literally the river is at spring levels. I mean, like, it is that high. It's amazing. And it's going to change up what we're going to do this fall for sure.
You know what I find weird about it is we've talked to people from across the country, and a lot of them are in the same boat as we are. Tons of rain. We had an inch on Saturday. I don't know how much we've had. It's just been like an inch every couple days. Some people don't have any.
Yeah, it's either feast or famine, right? You're either in the drought or you're getting pounded by rain.
I can't believe that because I can't even imagine we know what it's like, but I can't imagine because we've got so much green, so much water. You guys are starting to get pounded by the deer flies now.
Mosquitoes and deer flies are just horrendous, like all-time worst.
Can't even shoot your bow.
And the worst thing for us is normally we're mowing our food plots, right now. I can't even get the tractor to my food plots. And if I did, I'd have to take it in by ferry because there's standing water that we have to get through to get the tractor to where it's got to go.
You saw what happened to me. Ian might flash a photo of that. I got my tractor stuck in the swamp.
And that's what ours would be. I mean, ours would be buried to the axles if we attempted to get back to where we have to go.
What we're going to talk about a lot is, with private land management, we're not going to just talk about that, but have you planted anything yet?
No, but I'm not giving up, right? So as a food plotter, you got to figure out what you're going to do because I need the food come fall to hold my deer, especially this year. Man, we got a ton of up and comers that lived last fall, so I'm excited about it. There's a ton of 3 and 4 year olds, and if I don't have the food, they're not going to stay on my place. So here's what we're going to do. We got access to go in with the UTV around through the neighbors, which I had to call and ask permission, which they're going to let us. So we're going to spray the food plots, and then we're going to wait and see here in the next week or two if it doesn't dry out where we can get a tractor back there. We're just going to seed, and then I'm taking the Argo, and we're going to roll over all the standing vegetation, which is literally 4 feet tall.
It's chest high. Now, are you rolling that You're rolling that first and then seeding?
No, I'm going to seed it first
okay,
so that the seed gets all the way down to the ground, and then we'll roll it. We'll probably use an Argo if it's that wet, right? Just because the Argo, no matter how wet it is, we can get through to it. And where my plots are, it's going to be a little bit drier, but the Argo is so low to the ground, it's going to flatten that grass down, so my seed's going to have great contact. And also in case, and did you look at the long-term forecast now for us?
Oh, we're going to talk about that, but I want to get the plots that you're going to do that. Okay, so let's back up because he's like 100 miles ahead of everybody always as far as this stuff goes because Brad's been doing this for as long as I've known him, 30 years. First of all, how many acres of plots do you guys have?
So normally we plant about 20. This year, with the conditions the way they are, I'll be happy to get 7 or 8 of it in.
Oh my gosh,
you know
even
what I
half.
mean? Not even half, yeah. And we're not going to worry about the rest. I'm just really worried about my bigger kill plots off the bedding areas is what I really want to hold.
So what's in those plots now? That's kind of what I'm getting at.
So what was in there before was a mixture, like that of your rape, and then we had a lot of cereal grains in there. So it should have been all nice winter wheat and winter rye that normally this time of year you just go in. It would have already been mature or it already been, you can kill it easy with just a regular herbicide rather than Roundup, which I hate using Roundup all the time. But this year, what happened, it got so wet that the only thing that really grew in the spring and throughout the summer is reed canary grass.
Oh.
And if you guys are familiar with it, it's, it grows 3-4 feet tall, it heads out. And if you've ever had it on your place, there's thousands of seeds in the ground. So every time you work it up, if your seed doesn't germinate right away, reed canary grass is going to come up. So what we're going to use that reed canary grass as our cover, right? So we're going to spray it with Roundup. We'll get in there. If I can't get the UTV in there, we'll spray with Argo. I'll rig up the Argo so that it can hold our ATV sprayer and go in there, and we'll spray all the food plots that are next to those bedding areas and kill it. And then at the end of July, we'll probably seed, and which we'll use a combination of brassicas. I like purple top turnips. Any of this stuff in a lot of these blends is going to be fantastic. But then we'll also put some of that early season attract in either winter peas they love, right? Oats, buckforage oats, any of that cocker oats they call them.
And you're putting that in and then crimping over the top of it.
Yeah, and then we're going to drive over, and lay down that dead grass so it forms a mat. And it'll do two things. What I'm really worried about is right now we're so wet, but if you looked at the long-term forecast, it's really supposed to be dry. So by not tilling or not doing any of that, it's going to hold the moisture in the ground longer. My seeds are going to germinate. And once they get through that mat, right, they'll just take off. And then the roots are all staying nice and moisture because they don't get the direct sun like that.
Yep.
So it should be a winning combination. I know a lot of people are worried, that the drought hits. But once August hits, it cools down enough at night and then warms up enough during the day that you get that condensation from the plants. The plants will form their own moisture from the air. So if I can get the things to germinate is what I'm really worried about. And right now, honestly, I just need it to dry out. I need a week of weather with no rain. And we just got another inch this past weekend.
We're going to get this week. I think it's going to be dry. So to fill you in, because I know he over talks about a lot of this, what Brad's doing there is, you've heard of crimping. I don't know if you guys have all heard about it, but it is what he's talking about as far as with that canary grass. What's important is you kill it first.
You got to kill it. Yes.
Some of the stuff you don't have to, and that's why I was asking, because like some remnant food plot stuff.
Yeah, we got it. The PH is one of the sponsors, right, for some of our stuff, and they got a great crimper. And if that would have been all winter wheat or winter rye, all we have to do,
you could have just ran it over.
Run it over as fast as a tractor will drive. It kills it all instantly. It forms that mat that you wanted it to form anyway.
I've seen juries do this.
Yeah, it is the way to go.
Did it.
Unfortunately for me, rather than be quick down and dirty food plots, which we normally can do, we're going to put some time and a lot of sweat labor is going to go into it.
Which is going to help. So they're killing it first.
Yep.
Then seeding it.
Then seeding
it, and then running it over, crimping it, which actually is almost like fertilizer and a moisture.
Exactly.
Kind of sponge.
Exactly.
All in one. You mentioned the weather. This is interesting, and I'm actually going to give a shout out to a guy that we haven't had on the program. I'd like to get him on. James Kroll. He's worked for our competitor for years, but between what his advice is, which I think is pretty accurate, and then if you look at the Weather Service's long-range forecast, the next 3 months, they're saying north of the 35th parallel, so that's going to include almost all of us. I mean, now if you're in Alabama or Mississippi or Louisiana, different story for you guys. But if you're Tennessee or Indiana or Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, they're saying basically August, September, October is going to be unprecedented heat.
If you think about it, last fall, I planted my stuff this time of year. We got a rain in late July. It all germinated. And then August, nothing with rain. And all my seed was really small. And it just crumpled in the sun. I mean, it did not make it. So we had to reseed, which at the end of August, and I was like, oh, we're not going to end up with anything, right? And then, boom, we have one of the warmest falls on record for us. And we had great turnips. We had great everything. My food plots look fantastic.
So if you don't have that luxury of reseeding, what would you say, Brad? What would you recommend holding off for a couple weeks yet?
Yeah, I would probably hold off if I'm worried about money, right? Seed's expensive. I'm going to wait till the weather gets in a more stable pattern, because right now it's not stable whatsoever. We're going from 90 degrees, and today's perfect, right? 80 with no rain. But a lot of times with these storms are flashing up, that if you get hit by some of these cells, it'll wash a lot of your seed right away if you have any kind of slant.
So be very mindful of your seed bed and how deep you're planting. Make sure you're actually getting it into the ground.
For sure.
And then the other thing is, I think most people, if we're going to make a broad brush here, I'd say most people are going to be safe mid to late August, which sounds just so late.
For us, right? We're out of
know?
Wisconsin, so you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And we're in central Wisconsin. A lot of years we'll have that early frost, right? We'll have a frost by the
Right.
third week in September. So that's why we get our stuff in a little bit earlier. Last year we didn't get our first frost till mid-October, and that was a real mild one, and it was late October by the time we had
That
hard
is a
frost.
risk that you're going to run. You're going to run the risk of if you plant. I don't think it's too late to it. I think we're to the game where it's like if you haven't planted already, you're not too early.
Normally, we plant enough, right, in my place because we plant so many acres that we'll plant some early, and then we'll go in a couple weeks later. So literally, we don't have to worry about it. It's because no matter where it is, we hit the sweet spot with some of our plots. We're going to have food, but this year, it's not quite that way because, like I said, normally our plots, a couple of them would be ready to go, and we didn't even spray them yet. So we're behind the 8 ball. I'm feeling the crunch. Season starts early, so it's going to be interesting fall.
So what do you think about this, Brad? This is one of our TV sponsors, Rack Fuel. I'm really impressed with this Showtime, and I'm just going to tell you guys, I'm not going to even talk about the product so much, but what's in it. Basically, my place, I've got a very small property and some small food plots and a couple logging roads, and you don't get a lot of sunlight. So, and I even asked, I found out what was in this stuff. There's 4 seeds. It's plantain, burnet, small burnet, chicory, and alfalfa. And I asked the guy at the co-op, actually, I said, if I had, he goes, those are actually 4. I just said the seeds.
Forges, yeah.
And he said, well, number 1, they're all perennials. And number 2, they do pretty well with shade.
And deep roots, right? I mean, that's the key.
So that actually be like, if you're dealing with a drought situation, it's probably a pretty good blend to have.
Yeah. And I planted small burnet before, and the deer absolutely loved it, and it was in one of those shady areas. I don't know why I never went back to it, but it was one of those areas that the deer absolutely
You just
pounded.
don't see it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's if you guys are wondering, it's not a brassica per se. It's got like jagged little leaves that are in a circle.
It kind of reminds me of a jagged clover, like
but big.
Yeah.
Big. The leaves about, you guys can't see if you're listening to this. It's like if you put your thumb and forefinger together, they're that big. And then plantain, you know what this is? It's in your lawn. It's those things with the big leaves, with the stems that shoot up straight in the middle.
Yeah.
And you know what I found out about this, which I find fascinating? I don't think I told you this. It's called American plantain. It's just that big leafy thing. It kind of looks like a dandelion, but it's not. Huge, shiny leaves. The Native Americans used to use that. And what they did is, I found this absolutely fascinating. That was the first thing used to treat cuts and wounds. Really? They chew it, and then they take that and they put it on a cut. And then I did some more research on forage. As a forage, it's high in protein. I'm feeding my rabbits with it.
That's good.
I'm raising domestic rabbits. I don't know if you guys know this, but it's actually like a natural gut health plant that animals eat. So I think they say deer love it. Didn't know that. I have it all over on my property. And then chicory, most of us know about that. Chicory is, you can't kill it, really.
No.
It's almost worse than the dandelion, but the leaves are much more tender. And then alfalfa, obviously, you plant alfalfa hay, it's best hay. You can get super high protein.
Yep.
So if you got something like that in a shaded spot or a small plot, and you're worried about this stuff, you're worried about heat, you're worried about no rain, it might be better than planting
Oh, yeah, by far, a quarter acre, a third of an acre, even if it's small, just to hold the deer. What I love about that product especially is you can put it in some of those shaded areas where the deer are going to stage before they come out to your big plot, right? And it's so much easier to hunt over that because rather than 20 deer standing there all night long and now I got to get out of my ladder stand or box blind and they're still in the plot, well, now all those deer are past me, right? And now I'm on this little plot and I can just kind of sneak my way out of it.
It also makes it nice for like a access road.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they will stage or they'll maybe just kind of linger in there coming out. And it's something that nobody wants to sit there and replant. If you're planting logging roads, clover's great, but if you do it, and even if it gets weeded in, you don't have to do it every year.
Yeah, the other thing is if it does get really dry, right, on a year, and it's already been established, right, so it goes green to brown and looks like it's totally dead, those roots below the surface are still getting moisture. They're just not feeding the plant because they know it's kind of useless to do that. So they'll let the tops die off, and then as soon as it gets moisture, boom, it'll pop right back up. That's why you see alfalfa almost every single year come back. Chicory comes back. Your plantains in your lawn come back. It's because it has this sense like, oh, it's a drought. Let's close down and stay alive. And then as soon as you get the moisture, it opens back up and everything greens up. So what I'm going there is, if you see your plot get dead for a little while and it's extreme drought, you either got two choices. One, you got to water it or leave it alone. Don't work it back up because it's going to come back to life, so.
And over-tilling is a bad thing too, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Because every time you till the soil, any weed seed that's in that soil comes to the surface or it gets high enough that it's going to regerminate, and now you're fighting the weeds again.
Are you considering planting? What would you say if you had the percentages perennials versus annuals?
I like my favorite is like go-to would be something like this or strictly a clover. We always have about maybe 20% in that. And why I'm not as big as annuals as a lot of people are, especially in the South, is we have so many soybeans around. Like a lot of our farmers around us are cash croppers, right? So they're doing that 50-50 mix every other year. They're switching it over. So the deer literally all summer long have this super high protein, soybean fields. And normally we plant soybeans below my house. We'll have a 3-acre field full of soybeans. And by the way, it was too wet, so that's not soybeans this year. But anyway, those deer have that high protein source. So I like to use clover, kind of like you're talking about, on my logging roads or my paths. Why I like it is because I can keep it mowed. It's a great green source. And honestly, it doesn't grow tall. So during the hunting season, I can walk down those paths without leaving a lot of scent. And therefore, I'm not educating my whitetails. So, or using the e-bike. I don't know. I just started using the e-bike last fall quite a bit on my place. And what a game changer. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Love those things. If you haven't used one, they are awesome. You get addicted to checking trail cameras if you're not using a cell camera. But I love them.
They're so
nice.
quiet. Even like during turkey season, we used it this year. And if you can sneak up on a turkey in a food plot, man, you can sneak through deer, bedding area easy as heck. And I can't tell you how many times we rode the bike down and there was actually turkeys in the plot when we got to it. So it's pretty amazing.
So you mentioned clover. Do you get picky with your clover selections?
No, as long as it's a white clover, normally does best, right? That's what the deer like, and it's more palatable, and there's higher protein in it. But some areas, it's harder to grow white, so then you can put reds in. A lot of the stuff literally will start, the reds will almost come naturally if you control the weeds, right? And so if you don't want to spend a lot of money, just control your weeds, and pretty soon you'll have a nice clover field.
Yeah, they'll eat any kind of clover. The difference, if you don't know, white clover is much more palatable. The stems are softer. Deer are going to eat them, and they're going to gravitate to them. And if you want to see the difference, plant a plot half and half, and you're going to find out.
All of them are going to be in that one half. Yeah.
And that red stuff will just find its way. Eventually, it's going to find. Now, I know there's different strains, and this is something I don't know how many. I think there's 4 different strains of white, for the most part, that you can find if you look hard enough. And then there's some proprietary ones, but I would agree with you on that if you can get that established. And the other thing, too, actually, Brad taught me this years ago. You're very seldom, unless you're way better green thumb than I am, you're not going to get clover. You'll get clover, but you're not going to have that lush field overnight. It's going to take a couple seasons.
Yeah, especially at first year, a lot of people plant their clover in the fall, right, and use it as kind of a cover crop because your brassicas or your winter wheat, it will allow the clover to really establish. In the next year, green up, you're going to have a decent clover field. Some of us, will plant it in the spring, and that's the hardest to get established. But once it's established, and then you can do things, frost seed. And if you guys aren't familiar with frost seeding, all you're doing is looking for weak patches in your clover. And then in March here in Wisconsin, it probably is earlier in Illinois or Iowa, you're just taking your spreader again and spreading over those weaker spots and basically reseeding it. And as that ground freezes, and then during the day it opens back up, those seeds drop into the ground. It's almost like reseeding itself. And it's a great way from taking a clover field that would normally last 5 or 6 years and get 7 or 8 years out of a clover field, because let's face it, clover seed's expensive, right? So if I can minimize my expenses on clover, I'm going to go ahead and do some of that.
Okay, so I'm gonna cut us off on the food plot talk there. What I'm gonna ask everybody to do, and we promise to do this, if you have a question, it's going to be mostly directed to Brad. If you have a question on food plots, seed selection, whatever, leave the comment in the question, or leave the question in the comments wherever you're listening to the podcast or watching it, and I promise you we'll give you an answer. We'll actually give you an answer right there. We have 6 people monitoring this all day long, so we'll do that. So a question on anything of that related leading up to this season, ask it there. Brad, I want to talk a little bit about approach to early season bow hunting. I know you're still doing a lot of you're traveling all over the place. You just shot your big axis
deer. Yeah, so literally, but for what we started doing here, when July hits, right, most of the racks are getting pretty full potential. This year, with it being so wet, the deer, honestly, they're not on mine. I mean, they're not. My place is just too wet. They're all in the higher ground. So, for us, early season's not going to tell us as much as normal. So it's going to be a lot more in-season scouting. But that's the beauty of your cell cams, right? I mean, you get instant feedback. You know where the deer like to be, and we're going to put our cameras out there and keep our fingers crossed that it dries out enough that all the bucks come back into ours. Some years, honestly, it's either so wet that a lot of my big deer are going to be on the neighbors because they got a lot more sand than I do, and that's their fields are drier, and that's where they're going to go eat. So I mean, it's just one of those situations that might not benefit us this year, but on every year it's like this, right? I've been on the opposite. Some years it's so dry, and then I got all the food, and then I have all their bucks as well. So I mean, it's a give and take, and honestly, if my neighbors shoot some of those deer, great, I'm good for them. I'm not sad about it. It'll be nice. I just wish we were seeing them right now. We do a little bit of scouting via drone so that we can see where the deer are hitting. We're not spooking them or anything, but if we can see some of these hidden bean fields off the road, and I know there's 20 or 30 deer out there, well, now I know, or you can easily tell the buck groups because they're all in velvet, right? And you can easily see them. The other thing that we like to do is at night, a lot of those bucks will come into the bigger bean fields closer to the road. And we'll start using thermals. We got a thermal in monocular, and that thing is truly amazing for watching whitetails. They'll sit 20 yards off the road in the dark and just sit there and chewing the soybeans as you're looking at them. It's pretty awesome.
So that's a property and I know how you do it. You basically you've hunted this land your whole life. What are your techniques for when you're hunting out of state, property you don't know, early season? How do you approach it?
So I'm going to probably spend more time glassing the first day or so without really hunting, and then I'm only going to hunt in the evenings. But if you glass from afar, right, you can pretty much see where the deer are coming out. And then once you're going to go in there, you do the hang and bang, right? You're looking for the biggest trails that are coming out there and hanging close to it. I might not hang on that trail because the bucks, a lot of the mature ones, are going to be off that by a little bit. But that's what I'm early, going to look at. And then if we're out of state, I'm also going to take my cell cameras along so that I can get some instant feedback as well to other spots that I've scouted, and you have a camera out there. So literally, if you're hunting out of state and you can take 2 cell cams with you, put those in 2 of the other likely spots, well, now it's like having 3 hunters with you, right? You got yourself for observation, plus you got what's going on the cell cam. So it's just a good way to go.
So what would you say is I'm going to answer my own question after you answer it. What is the biggest stumbling block to early season bow hunting success in your mind?
I think a lot of people put too much pressure on whitetails. You're educating them before you even have a chance to kill them. And you get a big deer, leave him alone, right? I mean, just don't go out there. Don't watch him all the time. Just let him be and let him soak in that area. Because if he's in your area and you already know it, there's no sense in looking at him every night. And I think a lot of people literally just pressure. And these older bucks, right, they sense that, and then they just they're going to go nocturnal. And take it from me, I've learned from experience. I mean, I watched 170 one year, literally from my house almost daily. I was watching him, and not that I put a ton of pressure on him or anything else, but he vacated before the season, and I wasn't looking at him close. I was looking at him a couple 300 yards away, but somehow he vacated the area, and I just learned my lesson right there.
I would agree with you there. What I would add is for even the guys that are really into it, the pressure, obviously cameras and things like that, obviously going to run that deer out of there. The biggest thing that I've learned over the years is you've done everything right up until bow season. You've stayed out of there. You haven't been running in and out of there. You haven't educated the deer. but you just can't help yourself, and you go hunt a spot with the wrong wind on a humid day, or even just to hunt the wrong spot on a humid day, and you get smelled, and you might not even know that he smelled you. And I've had that happen so many times where it's like, here it opens, the second week of September. And a lot of times, especially lately, we have these 70, 80-degree days, and the humidity is high, and you're like, well, the wind's not blowing. I'll be okay. And you get out there, and you don't see crap. And then the law of diminishing returns, you hunt that spot the whole week, and you never see anything. He smells you, and you just didn't know it.
Yeah, I can remember one stance where we did do everything right. Only the neighbor was also getting pictures of this buck, and I didn't realize it. My daughter was the hunter, and literally it was a batch group of 4, and 3 of them were shooters, probably for me or you. I mean, there was one stud, and there's actually 2 140s in there. I would have been ecstatic for her to get any. And literally, I knew where they're coming into my food plot. I'm just staring at that spot. Boom, there they are. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to work. They're coming to this plot every night. And all of a sudden, the first one hit a spot, and he just totally freaked out and ran back. And we never saw any of those bucks. The bigger 3 again. We saw their buddy, the 4th one, here to find out before we crawled down. One of the neighbors, I saw him get out of his box blind, and he was hunting with a crossbow, and the wind was blowing right to where those deer were coming from, and he educated my deer. It wasn't even me. But there's your situation. I mean, the wind was wrong for him to be there. He wanted to try to cut the wind, even though he knew the deer were probably coming from mine. They smelled them. He probably never even saw them smell them, right? Because they're 300 yards on my property. But it all makes sense when you rolled that together. It was he educated the deer, and then they totally went nocturnal.
Something you can't remember, the one from mine like a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
exact same. And I'm like, where'd he go? I did everything right. I didn't hunt. I'm like, I can't hunt. Why? It's opening. I'm like, I can't. The wind is wrong. It's like 70% humidity. I can't do it. Everybody thought I was being way too weird about it. Well, here, lo and behold, exact same situation. Somebody hunting on their property, but very, very close.
Yeah.
And never saw that deer again for like 2 months later.
Explain why humidity. I know, but explain.
Humidity is the biggest thing, and that's the thing for me. It's like wind direction. Obviously, and the problem is let's talk about wind direction for a second. We all know what the predominant wind direction is going to be for our area, whether it's northwest or north or whatever, and you try to base it off of that. But if you're going out there hunting on a high humidity, and like I said, it doesn't have to. You just look at what the average humidity is supposed to be for that week. If it's higher than that, and you see this on the morning forecast on the TV every morning, even if it's your local station, they're going to tell you a deer can smell. We already know they can smell 100 times better than we can. They can smell 400 times better than we can when that humidity is high, because it only takes
moisture.
It takes 1 molecule of scent, and that could be for my breath. I could have sat there and used scent killer on everything, took a bath, did everything with my clothes, sprayed down when I got in the stand. But if I'm sitting out there sweating, which we do,
early season especially,
and that's why I love early season in Wyoming, that, but those deer are less pressured than they are here. We're talking 100,000 acres that we're hunting.
Yeah.
As opposed to hunting 10 or 30 here, and that high humidity. And some people will say, well, you just got to let that go. You're overthinking it. I don't think so.
Well, it depends on what you want to shoot, right? If you don't want to shoot a mature deer, right?
Cares,
go, right? If you want to shoot does, they'll probably come out to the plot. Young bucks, go. Yeah. They're going to come out to the young plot. You're trying to shoot a 4 or 5 year old. They don't have the tolerance, right? So it's literally really what you want to do as a hunter. That's a good.
Thanks for clarifying that. If you're just out there to shoot a deer, no, you don't have to sit there and be wringing your hands over it.
Yeah.
And you know me, there's many days when I go out there and say, I don't care. If I see a doe, I'm going to kill it. Well, then I can, Yeah. And it's not that does are less smart, and they're still going to smell me, but there's more of them, and I might have a better chance of shooting one. Deer Talk Now is brought to you by the all-new Edge 2 Pro from Moultrie Mobile. Never miss a moment with a 0.3 second trigger speed and a 100-foot detection range. Reduce false triggers, extend battery life, and fine-tune your captures with Moultrie Mobile's latest AI integrated technology. For more information, visit moultriemobile.com. This is actually a question. So shooting this is kind of an easy one these days. It's not too much an issue anymore, but should you still shoot your broadheads leading up to archery season? Should you switch over at some point?
I would shoot for sure, just to make sure it hits where you want it to hit, right? I mean, don't use that same broadhead that you shot into your foam target for a whitetail, because it's going to be dull unless you sharpen it back up. But you definitely want to see where it's hitting. I mean, everybody does.
Today's age, it's so, I don't want to say easy, but we can get our bows dialed in so much faster than we used to be able to.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think if you're shooting, we go to the 3D range here a lot, and if you're shooting really good with your field points, I think you can wait, and switch over a week or two before the season starts, and just see where you're at and make a small adjustment or two. I don't think it's like the old days where we really had to really worry about it.
Yeah, I often wonder right now in today's age how many people are actually paper tuning their bow anymore. I think a lot of them.
I don't think anybody is.
Because anybody that uses expandables, you really don't have to, right? For us guys
I have mine paper tuned at the shop.
I do too. I paper tune every one of them.
But it's like I don't sit there. I mean, I remember Bob, Rob, Pat, my teen. They used to sit there. Brad Herndon. They would number their arrows, and then they get really dialed in with it.
Yeah.
But
the equipment is so much better today.
So much
you don't
better.
have to do it.
And I'm not an elk hunter, so I'm not worried about shooting past my 50 or not. I'm not shooting 50, but I'm not worried about shooting past 30 yards.
Yeah.
So I don't have to worry about it too much. That's a pretty good one. Let's try to get to a couple more questions here. This is a good one. What about blind placement? I know that you're running a lot of semi-permanent blinds.
Yes.
Do you see differences when you're putting those things out there now and then trying to hunt them in early season?
No, I think they get so used to doing it right now. If we put them out right now, they'll be fine, right? I actually kind of stopped brushing them in this time of year. If I'm going to put even a ground blind, if we knew we were going to hunt out of a ground blind, I'll put it on the edge of a food plot. I might put it underneath an overhanging branch or something so it kind of blends in a little bit better. But it seems, to my experience, without hiding it, they might spook. The trail camera shows that they're definitely wary of it for the first couple days, but once they learn there's nothing in there, they'll just walk right by it. And then box blinds, I always thought, some of the more permanent box blinds, you're going to educate your whitetails, if you hunted out of them too much or if you put them on the food plots. But man, we started taking that to a whole different level by creating food plots designed not just to hunt out of box blinds. I guess I watched my good friend Mark Drury doing it, right? So it just told me it could be done, because if he's doing it, it works, right? So we started doing the same thing, and the big thing there is making sure you have an exit point where you can get out of that food plot without really scaring a lot of deer. So we put ours like over cricks or in a big clump of brush. When we crawl down, the deer can't see us get out of there.
That's the number one. Entry and exit.
Yeah.
Entry, how are you going to get to that blind or tree stand, and how are you going to get out of there?
Yeah.
In the early season is critical. Law of diminishing returns. You bust one deer, next time you're going to see fewer deer. The one thing I'd add on to yours, as you know, that I'm like you, I'm running the Tidewee pop-up blinds, and I'm also running Banks blind, the Stump 3, I think it is. That's the semi-permanent blind that's up on a platform. Keen Outdoors got that cool platform. I've got that on.
It is awesome.
Very, very cool. Check that out. It's very cool. It works on all blinds, but I have my Stump 3 from Banks on there. Anyways, with those blinds, I don't know what it is. It's probably because it's less pressure than what we used to put on the properties. But I will take like a golden rope. Like Wildlife Research has these. You've seen them, the ropes, and you put scent on them. It's basically you're creating your own mock scrape there, and I put those out now. And they also have one that's called an active branch. It's a bracket that you can attach to, like, I've got them on fence posts. I've actually put the fence posts in the ground, like the wooden ones, and also on field edges where I know the deer are coming. And for me, if you get that blind out there, even a stand, if you get I've got some muddy ladders that if you get your hunting setup ready, and we're 2 months away from the season, and you put something there that the deer are already coming through there and they're going to stop and work it, I think they get used to it pretty quickly.
I do too.
And then you stay out of there, and then again, okay, I'm all excited. I know deer are coming in there. I'm not hunting that until it is ideal.
The beauty of both of those things that you mentioned there, the golden rope and the bracket system, is it's a calling card for whitetails, right? So everybody thinks they're doing this for bucks, but as many does, especially this time, are going to pound it.
Does and their fawns are stopping in there. The other thing too is you can't just hang any licking branch product or make a mock scrape. You know, when you have to use a product, if you try to make a mock, you can't just plant it anywhere. It has to be somewhere where the deer are already coming through, because that's basically like you're walking down the sidewalk and I put something on the put a $10 bill. I would say $1. You wouldn't pick up $1 today. Put a $10. Maybe you won't even pick up a $10 bill.
I'd pick up either.
I'd pick up either. You put that on the sidewalk, you're going to stop and look at it. Ian wants both of them. I'll actually take both of them. I'll give you a rabbit instead. That's an inside joke. You're going to get them to stop. And that's the key thing. And you're getting them to stop in July. What's the point? The point is I hate to use that word, conditioning those deer
to hit that.
To hit it, and they might 2 months from now coming through that woods, I'm going to go check that spot out again and come through there. And by getting in there for 2 months, they see that blind. And like you said, brushing it in, it helps. And I think what it helps more is when you're hunting, not so much that it's brushed in that they can't see you, that it's brushed in that they don't see the movement when you come to full draw, or you try to get up with your crossbow, or however you're hunting.
Yeah.
So
the beauty of your post method, though, as well, is most of those deer are going to hit that every single day when they come into it, or every other day. And if you have a youth or somebody that's not as good, the deer is going to come in, and probably if you position that right, it's going to give them a perfect shot, right? And that's where we put a scrape post in every one of our food plots, and it's just to do that. It gets those bucks and does to focus more on that, or they're focusing on the deer that are working that rather than looking at the other things that are going around. So it's a good way to take their eyes off of you.
Who's a master at that? Steve Bartell is a master at that. I've seen him put, it's on those posts. He sunk a mock scrape post, made this, put the active branch on it. He was doing those when they still had them as prototypes. And when those deer came in to hit it, whether it was buck or doe, to work that licking branch is perfectly quartering away.
Yeah.
I mean, perfectly quartering away. So if that was a deer you wanted to shoot, just get ready, because if that deer is going to stop and work it, it's a money shot, and it's like 15, 20 yards. It's perfect.
Yeah. And then during the season, you got a trail camera on it, right? Every buck that comes into that food plot's going to check that out. So it's a great way to keep inventory of your bucks.
Do you, I don't. Do you actually put your cameras on those posts, or you put them on a different post?
I normally have them on the food plot facing the post,
Yeah.
is what we do, so that any buck that hits the post, although last year we had, we put a post in the middle of one of our plots, and honestly, it was a little bit too far to trigger the trail camera. And both me and my son Noah were about like, God, that thing's not working. I can't believe no deer have been hitting it. And then we went down there, and the scrape, because we're running cell, right?
It's all tore up.
Yeah, it's a huge scrape underneath it. I was like, well, I guess they were working on it. The camera just didn't go off. But it was no fault of the cameras. We just put it too far away.
I did the same thing with T-post for my cameras. And the same strategy as entry and exit on the blinds I do with that camera.
Oh, nice.
If I don't have a cell, like, where I'm at, a lot of that property it doesn't get a cell service. So I have to use the cameras old school. Like, check I only check them once a week. I'll do it in the middle of the day. But I have it where I can sneak up there, pull that card, put a new card in, and not walk across a food plot, not walk across a trail that they're going to go. So that's another tip that people can think about. Well, that ran us through an early season primer. I'm all excited to go now.
I am too. I'm ready. I just hope we get to see the season dry out for us that need it to dry out, and for you guys that need moisture. Hopefully you get the rain that you need. I'll be more than willing to give you my share of rain for the next month, because we got way too much.
I will never curse the rain, but it's too late to bottle it up and send it out and send it elsewhere.
Exactly.
All right. For Brad Rucks, I'm Dan Schmidt. Thanks for joining us. All we ask you to do is like and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast or watching this podcast. To see the video versions, YouTube, which is YouTube.com/DDH online, or the Deer and Deer Hunting Facebook page, the Instagram page, the Twitter page. You'll find us anywhere. For Brad, I'm Dan. We'll catch you next Thursday for another brand new episode of Deer Talk Now.